Welcome everyone. I believe we are live. Let me please have a 1 in the chat to know that we have a live connection. Yes, we are live. Excellent. Um, Welcome everyone. Thank you all very much for being here, and thank you, Thaddeus, for joining me for part 2 of this talk.
Thank you for having me on. Had a lot of fun with part one. Maybe fun's not the best word considering the nature of the material, but definitely very informative. Learned a lot and looking forward to seeing what else you have in store for us.
Yeah, no, thank you. Um, yeah, I there was a very interesting discussion that occurred after the show. A single atheist came on and started to, instead of commenting on the actual content of the video, they started responding to individual comments by people who were commenting on the video. And it was the typical Abdul approach, because in my view, atheism is Abdulism for people with intellectual pretensions. But he started saying things like, questions that sort of undermine, questions that try to deflect from the topic, but try to undermine what you're saying. Instead of making an assertion, he was just asking these questions that seek to undermine and cast doubt. And I asked him to specifically discuss what are the issues with the presentation. And someone else asked him, and then he said, "Oh, all of it. All of it's wrong." So I then asked him if he could specify anything that was wrong, and he absolutely failed to specify a single thing. So clearly he doesn't want to engage with the content, but wants to create this propagandistic sort of sense of doubt. Your comments on that?
Yeah, well, if you hadn't prefaced that by saying it was an atheist, I would have said, yeah, that's the typical Muslim behavior. They come on, they say this video is filled with errors, and you say, can you name one of them? And they can't because they haven't actually watched the video. It's just a predetermined thing that they're going to say to the video. It has nothing to do with the content. It's just to, start an argument, distract, however you want to put it.
Yeah, for sure. Um, okay, yeah, so guys, I'm going to go back to slide number 9. I just want to repeat something for a minute. I've made some small changes, and I want to go back over something because we are dealing with now, again, within Christian doctrine, we have the 10 statements, right? Correctly spoken, but the 10 commandments. One of those is thou shalt not lie, right? Thou shalt not bear false witness. Now, this is a doctrine that is, obviously, we are humans. We fail to abide 100% by these doctrines, but these are the ideals that we strive for. Now, of course, this is a standard we can be held to. Of course, atheists have doctrine as well, but even though they, as we saw yesterday with their dogma, even those who sign up to the doctrine don't necessarily agree with it, nor will they stand by it. It's not binding upon them. So no, it's not good to lie, except when you lie, it's okay because we don't actually stand by our doctrine because we don't have any values. So atheism is incoherent. But when you're dealing with demagogues, like if Hitler had to say, "I'm a, I'm a good person," would you believe him because he said so? Because he said it? If Hitler had to court the vote of the, at the time, very religious German public. Of course, once he gained political power, he never set foot in a church again. So these are things, politicians, you won't have to change your doctor. Nope, you won't have to, right? If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor, right? So unfortunately, we know that these promises change after the election, and that's exactly what happened. So anyway, so let's have a look at Voltaire. I want to go back and look at Voltaire again. It's something he says. Right now, he says, "Whatever you do, crush the loathsome thing." In other words, crush the church and love those who love you. And as we said, if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And this is identical to the philosophy and theology of Islam. Am I correct, Thaddeus?
Yeah, absolutely. In Islam, God Himself, Allah, only loves those who first love Him.
Yeah. And there's a comment here about, in the name of infallible science, we're going to be seeing exactly where science as a moral system leads us. We're going to see exactly, and this is what happened within the Soviet Union. This is what happened within the French Revolution. It happened under all of these socialist regimes that were devoutly atheist. So, again, crush the superstition of Christianity, right? And he said, "You crush the loathsome thing," referring to the church, but Christianity in general. This was an expression of his love of men, of liberty, of enlightenment, and of progress, right? And okay, so notice when I got these notes, the pages that I was reading from Wikipedia and others. Now, Wikipedia, you have to be very, very careful with Wikipedia. But I saw several articles that referenced him as a deist. Now, some said nothing, and I was of the assumption he was an atheist, being that he's incredibly anti-Catholic. He was incredibly anti the Roman Catholic Church. He was incredibly anti-Christianity in general. Now, why would he say crush the church, destroy Christianity? Because being a deist is easy. You have a faceless God who has never revealed himself, so you can just possibly make that claim for the purposes of propaganda, right? So as a deist, he says he saw godlessness as weakening the sacred bonds of society because we must rally around a common flag. We need a common cause to rally around, and if we are all pulling in separate directions, you have chaos in society. You lack trust, those bonds dissolve, which is what we're seeing today. Now, on this point, so he saw godlessness as destroying the bonds of society. Now, what kind of God did the atheist and deist socialists invent? Now, that's a question that we've obviously been working to answer, but notice this quote from Voltaire. Thaddeus, if you can read this and tell me what you think.
There is no God, but don't tell that to my servant, lest he murder me at night. So I kind of think of this as like, there's one atheism for the elite, the scholars, if you will, and there's a different atheism for the public, or as Voltaire would call it, deism, right? He's saying that the reality is there's no God. But if you tell the normal person that, society will break down. People will just start doing whatever they want. It'll be completely lawless. So we have to pretend otherwise.
And they'll hurt me.
We have to.
We can't have that.
Right, yeah. They'll attack me. They'll attack each other. So in the name of social order, let's just lie about it. But us elites, we know the truth.
There is no God. Yeah. So thank you to one of the commenters in the chat who left that. I really appreciate that. It was really insightful. I don't have the name right now, but thank you. Now let's have a look. This scientific morality, right? So they believe that morality is derived from science, that ethics is derived from science. Now, science has nothing to say about anything other than the material. And of course, these people are materialists. They believe that humans are they're just atoms knocking together, right? Your molecules making you do things, right? Now, science is not a moral system. It measures or tests the material. But of course, scientists are now making the claim, or quote-unquote scientists are now making the claim that science is answering philosophical questions. Any comment on that, Thaddeus?
Yeah, well, of course you're correct. That science, strictly speaking, just tells you facts. But there's always a scientist involved.
Yes.
And then comes the interpretation of said facts. And that's where the philosophy begins. That's where, you get away from strictly speaking facts and you're making conclusions that are more far-reaching, and they pretend that the two are one and the same, and they're not.
Yeah. So as was said in the comments, now science doesn't say anything; scientists do. And yeah. Now Islam claims to be Abrahamic. Right. This is because Islam obviously was rejected by the Jews. The Jews checked Muhammad out. They found that he was talking nonsense. And said, sorry. And then afterwards, only much later in the development of Islam, did Muhammad come up with the assertion, the unproven assertion that Islam is Abrahamic. Atheists, in the same token, claim to be scientific. Now the question is, now understand, if you look at logic, you look at reason as defined within the Sharia, within Islam, it is strictly in conformity with the Sharia. That logic cannot step outside of the bounds of the Sharia. The Sharia limits where the logic can go. Please understand the fact that the majority of these atheists were socialist and thus they were fanatical, right? The logic cannot step outside of the bounds of their Sharia, which is their philosophy, their dialectical materialism, or whatever they want to call it today. So their logic is not that of the Logos. Understand also that Christianity is based on reason, because the word, the Logos, it also means the principle of reason. Logos God is where we get the word logic. So their logic is constrained by their Sharia, just like Islam. It's not true logic. Thaddeus?
Yeah, absolutely. They they like to use this mantra that we only go where the facts lead, but as we've demonstrated, you know, that's just rhetoric. It's not the reality that every atheist, at least in practice, has unproven beliefs. And as we've seen, many times in their papers and whatnot, they're even quite openly honest about it. Like, the evidence doesn't support this position, but it will. So you should still believe me.
Correct. Now, TT said that Western science is not Islam, blah, blah. We are talking about these humanist socialists, right? And socialism is quite bluntly, it's Gnostic. Therefore, it's a recursion into myth. When you get rid of logic, you don't get reason. Rather, when people have gotten rid of Christian doctrine, they didn't retreat into reason. They retreated into myth, into paganism. Now, let's have a look at Richard Dawkins again. Oh, Richard, you're back. Richard Dawkins said that belief in anything that cannot be scientifically proved, i.e., faith, for example, is one of the world's great evils. Now, here's the thing. Skinner, that we mentioned in the beginning, Skinner that said that he cannot prove his case, well, he has faith in his views. Is Dawkins going to declare him to be evil? Conversely, Mr. Dawkins does not believe in evil because Mr. Dawkins contradicts himself and says, there is at bottom no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but pitiless indifference. Thaddeus, you're the better one on logic than me.
Yeah, this is a contradiction we see in atheism all the time. That, on the one hand, they look at it logically and they say if everything's blind chance and there is no designer, there is no purpose, then of course there can't be any good or evil as well. But at the same time, one of the most popular arguments against Christianity, at least in contemporary atheism, is that the Christian God is evil. Well, hold on a second. If there is no good and there is no evil, how can the Christian God be evil? So they're constantly walking this contradiction. And even when it's not arguing against Christianity, they certainly live their own personal lives as if there is a difference between good and evil. The atheist who doesn't live that way would be the extreme minority, less than 1% or something. So there's a contradiction between the belief that there is no evil and the practice of living a life as if there was a difference between good and evil, but as if what you do matters.
Yeah. In fact, I was going to add a slide to this, but I didn't get around to it yet. There's a very, very well-known atheist, 20th century major force in the, obviously, U.S. scholarship, major atheist from the last century, and he wrote scathingly of atheists, saying, but you guys are violating your own logical principles. If you are materialists, then you cannot think of a spirit, being spiritual. He would mention he rattled off a whole bunch of things where these atheists were contradicting themselves. How can you value human life? And so on. He laid it out. He was very, I need to add that at some point. Now, what's interesting is, of course, that Mr. Dawkins will say that atheism is moral. Atheism is good. Atheism is, it's neutral, but it's good. It's neutral. It has no values, but it's moral. They have no values, but it's the best thing. And of course, your beliefs are evil. And of course, there is no virtue except their having no virtues is virtuous, which is not only babblingly incoherent, but it's their actual position. It's totally irrational. He claims there's virtue in having no virtues. So, now he believes that free will does not exist, that actions are determinist. But then, why does he blame people and call it evil when our molecules caused us to believe what we believe? That is?
Yeah, it's another contradiction. This is a classic debate in philosophy because if you look at the world and you think that everything's chance, well, then it has to be deterministic, right? If all there is molecules banging against each other, as you put it, then everything has to be deterministic. Then there is no such thing as free will. Yet every person feels like they have free will. Even people who, argue against it act as if they have free will. So it's very interesting. And as you said, he's passing judgment on people who had no choice but to be religious, saying that they're wrong and stupid and they're causing all the world's problems. Well, hold on a second. They didn't have any choice in the matter. It wouldn't have mattered how great of an argument he made. They would have still been religious because it wasn't their choice to begin with.
The molecules made them do it. So where's the problem? In fact, and Mr. Dawkins, the majority of the molecules tend to be religious. Well, how is that? We obviously made up of religious molecules. If someone could find the God molecule, that'd be great. Okay, so now let's look at the logical outcome of science defining morality. Okay, so what do we get when we take this philosophy, this nihilist philosophy, this atheist nihilist philosophy, and we apply it to morality, this science, and apply it to morality? Let's have a look. This is a man called Yuval Noah Harari. Now, if you've ever listened to him speak, you will know that you feel like you need to go and wash your hands and take a shower after listening to him. And this is his book, Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. And he tells us here, human rights are not real, but don't tell anyone. God is not real, but don't tell the servants or they'll kill us. Human rights aren't real, but don't tell anyone. I guess this might go against the US Constitution, right? But, okay, it might go against everything that leftists supposedly hold dear, but he's letting us know. He's a scientist. He's one of the priests, one of the high priests of atheism. Human rights are not real because, you see, everything's deterministic, everything's materialistic, therefore there are no rights, especially no God-given rights. So this man is either a hypocrite, a liar, or he is a totalitarian demagogue out talking propaganda. Your thoughts, that is?
Well, I'm actually going to say the opposite. You said that, he's a liar. Well, he's only a liar or a hypocrite if he doesn't actually believe what he's saying. If he actually believes what he's saying, then he's being logically consistent. This is what atheism should tell you. If everything is blind chance and humans are no different than anything else, then there is no such thing as a human right. That there's nothing that you can say that, my human rights are being violated by a totalitarian regime, because you don't have any rights. You're just a biological machine with no value or purpose. So if someone, quote unquote, abuses you, that just means they did something you don't like. And there is no actual right. Nothing's been violated.
Yeah, you only have preferences. Now notice, perhaps he's an extremist atheist. So now he says human rights are intersubjective. We all like to think that individual humans are important. But, news for you, they are not. You have no importance. You have no value. As Yuval points out, there is nothing scientifically special about any individual sapiens. Our modern prioritization of the individual is a leftover from the Christian concept of souls. Oh, so in other words, you guys are barbarian cavemen who still believe in individuality. You need to give that up. You need to realize you have no worth, you have no value, you are unimportant, you have no rights, and whatever happens to you, it doesn't matter.
I do like that he gives credit to Christianity to bringing about this concept of human value, though, because the typical atheist will just say that, this is just something that all human beings agree with, and always has been the case, and that's not really so. It is really the Jewish Christian tradition that has brought about this belief that human beings have intrinsic value. The other religions of the ancient world didn't necessarily teach the same thing.
Yeah, and he says, obviously, and then he quotes Voltaire again. So now some people are going to say, Voltaire never said that. That's a false quote, falsely attributed to Voltaire. Okay, well, someone could tell Yuval and someone tell him he's doing atheism wrong, okay, because atheism leads to enlightenment, beauty, love, freedom. This guy is basically endorsing the views of genocidal maniacs like Hitler, Pol Pot, Stalin, because quite literally, under Stalin, under Lenin, under Mao, and so on, in these communist atheist governments, they had quotas for killing people. Quotas. They would simply say, we need you to go and kill 10,000 enemies of the people for no reason. and they would simply go and kill them. People who'd done nothing. When you read through the history, it is incredible. I've been reading some crazy stuff, and this is what happened under atheism, because human life has no value and no meaning. There is no sin, there is no wrong, there is no justice. And this man is doing exactly what enabled the worst atrocities in human history. Last comment before
Yeah,
we. You know?
yeah. I mean, that's kind of the point, right? He is saying where atheism naturally leads, and once you get there, there's nothing to stop these kinds of atrocities. Uh, you say that he's enabling them, but I say that, the logical conclusion of atheism enables them. I don't feel that he personally is arguing for it. I think he's just showing us where atheism leads. He's being honest.
Yeah.
Other atheists are not so honest, with themselves and others about where atheism leads.
Fair enough. Thanks for that. And false doctrine says, doesn't make sense. Lest he kill me at night. Why scared of death if life is meaningless? Voltaire's acting as if his life is meaningful. I mean, it's not like he's being murdered. It's just a preference of his servant to kill him. That's just a preference, right? Because, I mean, morality is just a preference, right?
Well, I mean, he still has the preference to stay alive. So I think it's still logically consistent. Maybe he shouldn't say murder. Maybe he should say end my life or something, a more value neutral statement. But he still has the preference to go on living.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna run through back to where we ended off yesterday. So we ended off here. Okay, this was of course our discussion of the American Humanist Association and atheism as actual religions. So under U.S. government law, atheism and secular humanism, which are devoutly atheist, of course, are protected as religions and are recognized as religions and went to court to be recognized with the same protections as theistic religions. They just are regarded as non-theistic religions. If Buddhism is a religion, then secular humanism is a religion, and thus atheism is also a religion. So, of course, atheism is anti-religion, well, anti-Christian, but yeah. So we went through this yesterday. The government must treat atheism as favorably as theistic religion. What is true of atheism is equally true of humanism. Karl Marx was a humanist. Lenin, Stalin, Mao, Pol Pot were all humanists, just by the way. Oh, and by the way, Hideki Tojo, I went to look him up. I found some interesting information on him. He was a socialist. So the Japanese man, Hideki Tojo, the only guy that wasn't technically an atheist on that list was Hitler. So they were all socialists. All of them. Every single one was a socialist. So there you go. So recognizing secular humanism as a religion for First Amendment purposes, non-theistic ethical society qualified for tax exemption as a church, the American Humanist Association. If you go to Wikipedia, they say some Christian groups have tried to utilize, this was the Supreme Court ruling, the one prior to this, have tried to use the Supreme Court ruling as pretext to imply that atheism and secular humanism are religions. Well, it says so on the frickin' page.
Yeah, they used that term for themselves in the past. They've since stopped using it, but they used it for themselves in the past, and the court agreed with them that for purposes of the law, they should be considered a religion. So, what is the problem exactly?
Yeah, we're a religion. And they're a proselytizing political religion. They are a proselytizing religion. They seek converts. They seek political power. This is, again, like Islam. So treating humanism as a religion, and the prison department violated both by refusing to recognize humanism and authorize humanist dawah meetings on the same terms as theistic faiths. So humanists want their dawah too, right? Recognize that humanism is a religion for establishment clause under, and equal protection clause purposes, and the Supreme Court has held that secular humanism is a religion. Rightio. So yes, this is, yeah, there you go. So secular humanism is a religion. Now, John Dewey, this guy's really important within the American educational system. We showed Gramsci, the Italian guy who is fundamental to CRT, right? Cultural Marxism, CRT, what's the term again? Critical race theory, and so on. Okay. And now he described humanism. Now, this guy was critical in the American school system. He took secular humanism, this religion, and he basically forced it on the American school system. We'll have a brief look at that. So John Dewey described humanism as a common faith. Apparently, it's the default position of mankind. Socialists are constantly saying that atheism is the default position. Well, this guy claimed then already, way back, that it's the common faith of mankind. Right?
Something our Islamic friends say as well. Everyone's born a Muslim. Everyone's born an atheist. Everyone's born a humanist.
Thank you for catching that.
They can have the babies, and I don't want to be associated with something that is what unthinking people believe in. So,
Yeah, so everyone is born an atheist. Yeah, common faith. But it's a faith. Understand? It's a common faith. It's not a lack of faith. It's not a lack of belief. It's a lack of belief. Right? So Julian Huxley called it religion without revelation, and the first humanist manifesto spoke openly of humanism as a religion. Now, many humanists can be cited who have acknowledged that humanism is a religion. And I'm just going to have just a handful of these guys up here because I would be a whole day otherwise. And I showed you the manifestos. Shall we do the manifestos again, Thaddeus?
yeah, let's go ahead and bring that up.
Nicholas,
Right
welcome.
of the other
Checking in
stream,
from Switzerland. Okay, great. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it's right at the end of the other stream. So rather than force someone to go back and see the very end of that if they were unable to catch it.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the American Humanist Association, and their catchphrase is "good without a god," advocating progressive values. We looked at the term progressive, where that comes from, equality, what that actually means. That's the destruction of the abolition of hierarchy. Humanists, atheists, and freethinkers. Okay, fantastic. Humanist Manifesto. So if you look at the word religious humanism, they call themselves religious humanists. This was 1933, their first manifesto. They're religious humanists. They are religious humanists. And down here, they're religious humanists. And if you go and you do a search, you'll find that the word religio, the word, right, they speak of religion a whole lot. Because they're a religion. They've always been a religion. Right? Religious humanists. Yeah, and of course you've got, right, so they're religious humanists. Now, let's see, there was one thing that was really interesting. So this is the first one. Of course, it was superseded later in the 50s by the second manifesto. Right? And let's have a look here. So that is your thoughts on this. Those who signed Humanist Manifesto 2 disclaim that they are setting forth a binding credo. So they have no absolute moral values.
Yeah, you sign the purpose of signing a statement of beliefs here is to say that we all agree on these things. And then one of the statements they sign is to say, but we might not agree on these things, actually. We're just signing this piece of paper for the heck of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you cannot hold them to anything. You cannot hold them to a single claim. They say, well, we also believe lying is bad until we feel the need to lie. And then it's okay. Then it's not a problem because how do you judge that? So understand that they need to show me where in their manifesto it shows us that this is bad. Oh, there's something, I'll get to that. There was another page I wanted to mention, something from the Bible that very clearly shows the hypocrisy in it and how it's actually spoken of very clearly within the Bible, as in the behavior that they are displaying. Let's have a look at this word credo again. These affirmations are not a final credo or dogma, but an expression of a living and growing faith. This is 1973. Sorry, my bad. So this is the new manifesto from 1973. And then later on, they were like, oopsie, we're calling ourselves religion. That's bad. So then they had to change the propaganda. But of course, they are legally a religion. Yeah. And
I don't think they went back to the Supreme Court and said, please remove our non-profit status. We are no longer a religion.
Yeah. Because they still have a non-profit status. They still do. They're still technically, as the court stated, registered as a church. So the Church of Atheism. Welcome, brothers. Fellowship of Religious Humanists. Yes, exactly. Because it's not a religion. So false doctrines. Don't go calling it a religion because it's not a religion. I know that they call themselves, but these are not real humanists. Understand? These are not proper Muslims. These guys worship the Dajjal. These guys, this is because they fought with Abu Jahl and right, Thaddeus?
Yeah, I guess so. Just like Islam, it's the non-religious belief system where everyone is mistaken about what they believe, but it's still true.
Yep, yep. Church of Atheism. That's that's not halal. Yes, but it's the fact. It's a simple fact. I mean, oh, by the way, I wanted to show you something very interesting. Sam Harris says he wouldn't care if Hunter Biden had corpses of children in his basement. I mean, Sam Harris, I don't know, he must have torpedoed his career by making that statement. Now, let's have a look here. Sam Harris, not much of a neuroscientist. He brands himself as a neuroscientist. We can read on his website that he's a neuroscientist, philosopher, blah, 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 blah. Okay? However, notice here, I just wanted to mention this. So this guy, this is a scientific, so this is like a journalist who went and had a look at Sam Harris in detail, and he said, so he's only put out 2 papers, sort of, with some minor roles in collaboration. So Sam Harris is not a published neuroscientist. He hasn't done any neuroscience work. He's only collaborated in a minor sense on a couple of papers. And he says, I agree, by the usual standard of having a degree, Sam Harris is a neuroscientist. By the standard of actually doing neuroscience, he was hardly a neuroscientist to begin with and hasn't been doing much science for years. His PhD was funded by his own non-profit set up for this purpose. It seems then that he almost bought himself a PhD degree. He funded it himself, got others to do a lot of the work, and did the absolute minimum to get the degree. He is no expert scientist and scarcely a scientist at all, but he has a talent for making podcasts. Just thought I'd put that out there.
You know, this reminds me of a certain figure very popular in the Islamic world. I think his name starts with a Z. Maybe Zakir Naik, the medical doctor who has never seen a patient in his life.
Yes. So this is the article is it's Kierkegaard.substack.com. So you guys, I mean, take it for what it's worth. And of course, Hunter Biden could literally have had the corpses of children in his basement. I would not have cared. So yeah, he's a medical doctor. Yeah. So yeah, just thought I'd let you guys know about that. And Sam Harris, the prominent atheist and liberal podcaster, defended Twitter's censorship of the New York Post's Hunter Biden laptop report. He admitted the censorship was absolutely a conspiracy to prevent Donald Trump from winning re-election. And Hunter Biden could literally have had the corpses of children. So he defended censorship. He defended conspiracy. So, I mean, yeah, this is Sam Harris. He approves of media misinforming voters to stop Trump. So this is a guy who works on reason, right? So he's...
Well, you know, the end justifies the means, I guess.
That is actually in the Sharia. That is an actual ruling from the Sharia. So yeah, just wanted to... That's... Okay, now, the first Humanist Manifesto spoke openly of humanism as a religion. Many humanists can be cited who acknowledge that it is, and as we've seen, the courts... They defended it in the courts. They are a religion. Claiming that humanism was the new religion was trendy for at least 100 years, perhaps beginning in 1875 with the publication of The Religion of Humanity by Octavius Brooks Frothingham, son of the distinguished Unitarian clergyman Nathaniel Langdon Frothingham, pastor of the First Unitarian Church of Boston. So let me see. So this guy started The Religion of Humanity. And in the 1950s, humanists sought and obtained tax-exempt status as religious organizations. Even the Supreme Court spoke in '61 of secular humanism as religion. It was a struggle to get atheism accepted as a religion, but it happened. From 1962 to 1980, this was not a controversial issue.
Yeah. And then they changed their minds.
Yeah. Then they changed their minds. It's crazy. But this was the norm. Okay, so now, then Christians began to challenge the establishment of religion, which secular humanism in public schools represented, because they were now forcing Christianity out, and they were then forcing themselves in, right? They used the same tactic atheists had used to challenge prayer and Bible reading under Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. So with the ACLU involved and the question being controversial, secular humanists then completely reversed their strategy. And they claim that humanism is not at all religious, but scientific and based on reason, right? We've seen that this whole based on reason thing means sexual licentiousness, means debauchery. Now, secular humanists and humanistic courts have admitted and set precedent that humanism is religion. It is the position, the legal position is humanism is religion. They now claim humanism is not religion in order to avoid problems under the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. The problem is the legal precedent's already set. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's ironic that they first appealed to the First Amendment religious freedom clause to say that you can't explicitly teach Christianity, and you can't give it preference, you can't fire for someone for not being a Christian, et cetera, et cetera. And then they turn around and say, now that we have enough power to enforce our beliefs on the education system, oh, well, we're not a religion anymore.
Yeah, very convenient, right? Yeah, it's like Islam. It's like when you're, do not be peaceful to the unbelievers when you are uppermost. So now this is Julian Huxley. So he wrote a book, no, he wrote an article, a very famous article in the Humanist magazine, 62, The Coming New Religion of Humanism. So his brother is Aldous Huxley. Aldous Huxley has a long black history, apparently, according to his name. And he wrote of a humanist-based religion that must redefine divinity. I feel sure the world will see the birth of a new religion based on what I've called evolutionary humanism. The beliefs of this religion, of evolutionary humanism, are not based on revelation. A humanist religion will have the task of redefining the categories of good and evil. Ah, we want to diddle your 3-year-old boy. We want to diddle him. It's good. We've just redefined it. By the way, this is exactly what the communists did. This is precisely what the communists did. They redefined what was good, what was evil. So understand now, is the coincidence that this is exactly what the worst governments in history did? And a humanist religion will, like the ancient Greeks, oh, he's appealing to the pagans now, stress excellence. It'll go further than the Greek principle of moderation and will make psychological integration and total wholeness. I will be one with the universe. I will find myself. An essential aim, and in some sense, the equivalent of the state of salvation in Christian terminology. They will bring you salvation. From what?
Yeah, well, you gotta make salvation in this life so that you have no need to seek after anything else.
Yeah. False doctrines, yes, because he asked, am I hearing you correctly? Atheism is following the stages of jihad. Yeah, pretty much, because they are both socialist. They're both Gnostic. So, yes, they share a great deal of overlap. Yeah, so he was a evolutionary biologist, a eugenicist, and of course a globalist. Died in 1975. So yeah, they will give you, because they realize they need to give people something very much akin to what the Christian church gives them. They cannot abolish the church. They need to co-opt the church and corrupt it, invert it for their own purposes. That is what they're doing. Now, John Dewey. So this is a book called The Messianic Character of American Education. And here he is talking about socialists. Okay, this is John Dewey here. He is talking, this is a guy called Mann, he's talking about some crazy, crazy secular humanists who want to indoctrinate your kids. His views on philosophy and education flowed from his naturalistic worldview, in other words, materialistic. He replaced Christianity with a religion of his own called secular humanism, which he described as follows in A Common Faith. Here are all the elements for a religious faith that shall not be confined to sect, class, or race. Such a faith has always been the common faith of mankind. We were all born like this. It remains for us to make it explicit and militant. So we need to enforce it on others. He rejected God and God's word as central to education and replaced them with secular humanism. So this man took over the American school system. Democracy was Dewey's God, and the state school, his church. He taught that education centered on the child instead of God. In other words, indoctrinate the child. The child becomes the sun about which the appliances of education revolve. He's the center about which they are organized, the school and society. So, your thoughts, Thaddeus?
Well, on that first part there, everyone's born into atheism or secular humanism, but then everyone leaves it for some reason, but we got to bring them back by force. Just replace the word secular humanism with Islam. Statement works perfectly. And then this last part here, the child becomes the sun. They become the center of the universe. It's all about the individual. It's all about me.
Well, let's have a look further. This is another copy, the same book, a different cover, same book. What has public education been trying to accomplish? We need to ask this. So before the 1830s and Horace Mann, a guy called Horace Mann, no schools in the US were state supported or state controlled. They were local, they were parent teacher enterprises, and they were supported without taxes. And they took care of all children. However, they were remarkably high in standard and were Christian. Don't forget, during the American Civil War, right, people read and wrote at a far higher standard than university students in America today. Right? The level of ability to read and write. If you read letters from the Civil War, I mean, good grief. The language those people used was amazing. And people graduate from high school today. I mean, what 70% of US high school graduates are illiterate? So
I mean, not technically speaking.
functionally illiterate, they're called.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure about that. I mean, not technically, but the standard of writing definitely has taken a huge hit. And along this lines, of the top 200 universities, not exact figure, there is an exact figure, but of the top 200 universities, like 198 were founded as explicitly Christian universities, teaching Christian principles, teaching the Bible. And then nowadays it's like, two are still like explicitly Christian or something like that.
Yeah, that's really sad though. That's really sad. Guys, since we are here, please like, Sharia, and subscribe. Right? That'll be great. Really appreciate it. There's like 5 million people in watching, and there's only like 44 likes. So I'd appreciate one or two more. That'll be nice. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah, but we had much higher levels of education back then. Now notice, from man to the present, the state has used education to socialize the child. In other words, to make him subject to socialist indoctrination. The school's basic purpose, according to its own philosophers, is not education, right? Not in the sense of the three R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. Instead, the point of education is to promote democracy, socialist democracy, and equality, not in a legal or civic sense, but in terms of the engineering of a socialized citizenry. Right? Remember, equality is simply the removal of hierarchy, the destruction of hierarchy, so abolition of hierarchy. Public education became the means of creating a social order of the educator's design. What are we seeing today? What is the most important? What is the single most important topic in school today? Let me see. This seems to be the most important topic in school today, right? This seems to be very, very critical to school education, especially for 3-year-olds. That seems to be the major topic. That's what school exists for today, right?
I mean, objectively speaking, I'm sure it doesn't take up a majority of the time, but it actually does take up a good majority of the time in public school, especially in early grade school, is self-esteem, or as He Never Returns as a Horse puts it, feelings. It's about making the child feel valuable. And I'm not saying that that's not important, but that's something their parents should be doing. And it's certainly not the purpose of the education system to be you come here and we're just going to say that whatever you do is right. Especially, when you're talking about a young kid who doesn't actually know how to read and write. Teachers are instructed not to correct the kid. He writes the wrong word, he misspells things. Don't correct him. That might hurt his self-esteem. He'll learn it on his own eventually. And it's just total nonsense.
Yeah, man. There's something I just want to find, but actually, let me just find an article that I thought would be very, very interesting. Here, this might be very, very interesting. This I put on my Facebook recently, just so we know what the whole point of modern education is. You can see this. Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools is promoting a book on the ins and outs of gay sex to 7th graders. Rub the head of his COCK back and forth with your hand. In order to be able to CUM at all, you or your partner may need to finish off with a handy. Now, it started with We just want to get married. It will end with, we're going to your kids in the bum and teach them how to do it. Now, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, okay? And this is from the ins and outs of gay sex to seventh graders in a chapter called Boy on Boy Sex. Now, I wasn't aware that this is part of the critical training of kids the age of 7, 8, 9, and 10 at school. I wasn't aware of that, but apparently it's very, very important for kids to learn this at school. So, yeah.
Yeah, apparently. Who knew?
Yeah.
I'm a little speechless at that one.
There's a lot more of that going on than you realize. It's worse than that. This is mad. Okay, sorry. So let me just go back here. Now, so such men saw themselves in the school in messianic terms. Their whole point was to push the whole social engineering scheme, and this is exactly what they did, right? And this book was instrumental in launching the Christian school and homeschool movements. Now this is Horace Mann. So, about Mann's intellectual progressivism, the historian Elwood Cubley said, no one did more than he to establish in the minds of the American people the conception that education should be universal. Now, another word for universal is communist, right? As we showed in the beginning. Actually, did I show you guys that? No, I didn't. Oh boy, maybe I should show you that. Let me actually just do this then. Okay, now let me show you guys something that you may not be aware of right now. Have a look at this. Okay, now before the conspiracy theorists go nuts, I'm not interested in hearing your stories about the Catholic Church. Communism, from Latin communis, common, meaning universal. Remember, they modeled themselves after the Catholic Church. They wanted to become the universal religion. So when they say universal, they mean communist. Everyone thinks that communism means whatever you think it means. No, it means universal. It's a copy. It's literally a ripoff of the Catholic Church. They want to be the universal Catholic religion. That's exactly what they want to be. So let's go back here to Horace Mann. So, education should be universal, non-sectarian, in other words, non-Christian, because education at that time was heavily Christian. It should be free, and that its aims should be social efficiency, civic virtue. In other words, those same virtues that Richard Dawkins talks about, those secular humanist virtues, and character. Build the kind of personality, program them to have the character and the personality that you want as a social engineer, rather than mere learning or the advancement of sectarian ends. In other words, no Christian ends, and it's not about education, it's about indoctrination and control. Your thoughts, Thaddeus?
Oh, they're being honest. It's all about the ends. I mean, it makes sense, right? If you don't have any real moral principles, you have stated ones, but you don't have any that are actually true and objective. Well, then the only thing you can judge by is what the outcome is.
Yeah. Now, this is the Old Deluder Satan Act of 1647. As an example, Massachusetts passed the Old Deluder Satan Act in 1647, laying the basis for public schools in America. Oh my golly, Christians founded the public school system in America. Oh, good grief. The Puritans valued literacy highly. They believed all individuals should be able to read and interpret the Bible for themselves. Shocking. In 1642, Massachusetts had required parents to ensure their children's ability to read, and 5 years later, the state mandated community schooling. Act required towns to support teachers for their children, and the religious basis of the act was explicit. The act stated its intention was to thwart the old deluder Satan in his goal to keep men from the knowledge of the scriptures. And Horace Mann and Dewey and all these other guys are very, very interested in keeping men from the knowledge of the scriptures.
Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. That the one thing that they don't want to have taught is Christianity, almost like it's specifically anti-Christian.
One would come to that conclusion, wouldn't you, Thaddeus? Wouldn't you just come to that conclusion? Nicholas says, thank you. As usual, the main criticism of Lloyd's presentations would be that they are too extensive. There's a lot of information in this and the previous episode. People do tell me, I don't know how to dumb these things down. I honestly don't know. How do I dumb it down? How do I make it into a 5 minute sort of how? I mean, Thaddeus, is it possible? Or maybe I just, I don't know. I just see all of
Yeah,
these
well, I mean,
connections.
I don't think that, you know, he was actually criticizing, just saying that there's
No,
so
no,
much
no, no, no. I
information.
know. I'm not saying it's a criticism. I'm just saying, how do I? Is it possible to present this, in a Mickey Mouse fashion? I don't know if it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, you could make a short video, but it would lack the depth, you know, and that has purpose. You can make a short video just on one little tiny topic, and people might like that. But you know, maybe we're not all that interested in reaching people who are only interested in TikTok style arguments.
Yeah. So this is. I mean, look, we need to go back to the history. So thank you, Nicholas. That was not criticism. He says they are gold mines. Look, I spend a lot of time on these things. This is not 5 minutes of work. Believe me. This was. I've been busy. I know I haven't been online, but man, I've been researching. This is 2 years of research you're looking at here. Okay. Now I'm not saying that I've been collecting data for a couple of years now, and recently, a couple of months back, I said, it's time I dive into this. It's not that I've got nothing to say about Islam, but I've said basically everything that kind of needs to be said. I think I've done that's kind of done. I need to finish a few things, granted, but I have to do 2 slides per video. This call, yeah. Okay, so notice those who signed the Humanist Manifesto disclaim that they are setting forth a binding credo. Wouldn't that be abrogation? That is
Well, I guess so. That you know, Human Manifesto 2 abrogated Human Manifesto 1.
one, and it was abrogated by Human Manifesto 3, and then anything they say is abrogated by what they say tomorrow. Yeah, so basically, this is Islam. It's Islam called humanism, and Manifesto 3 removes all mention of religion. It is now progressive and guided by reason, as with the French, as with a crazy, insane, genocidal French. Oh, by the way, this is the tax return of the American Humanist Association. So yeah, this is their tax return. Obviously, they tax exempt. We strive to bring about a progressive society where being good without a god is accepted and respected way to live life. We're accomplishing this through civil liberties, our defense of civil liberties, and secular governance. Oh, they want secular governance. They don't want religious governance. It's not that they're neutral. They want their kind of governance. By our outreach to the growing number of people without traditional religious faith, and through a continued refinement and advancement, in other words, they are proselytizing, an advancement of the humanist worldview. So yeah, their little tax return. This is 2019 is the latest one. I went to look it up on the IRS website. So
Yeah, I think that there's about a 3-year lag between when they're made public and when they're filed. So that makes
yeah,
sense.
Arnold and Thanos says, Lloyd, this info is fabulous. Thank you. Much appreciated. There's several. Yeah, there's 3 manifestos, Andrew. I see you got a new logo. No wonder I didn't recognize you. Okay, so this is from the Texas Law Society, I believe. It's the Texas Legal Society or whatever, and they put together this thing. The establishment of the religion of secular humanism and its First Amendment implications. Oh my gosh, these lawyers have decided that this is. I wonder why they made that decision. Could be because it's a religion. And they say there's a growing concern in contemporary academia regarding the nature of modern society. Okay? And they speak of a pagan society in the United States. Now, we've seen that Marxism effectively has taken us back to paganism. Atheism, under the French, went straight back to Greek and Roman paganism. So they went straight to paganism, did not stop and pass go. I mean, they did not stop. They just passed go and they went straight to paganism. Right? They didn't stop at reason. They went straight to debauchery and paganism. Our whole culture seems to be facing the possibility of a kind of nervous breakdown, and the problem is the deepening secularism that has taken hold of the present cultural matrix. Secularism, or what is termed secular humanism, poses a serious constitutional quandary because its purpose is to eliminate traditional theism as a significant aspect of reality by forcing traditional theism from the arena of public discourse and American institutional life. It is forcing Christianity out and forcing itself in. It is not benign. It is not reason. It is a religion that is aggressive. Thaddeus, your thoughts? I have to disappear for one
Yeah, I
moment.
mean, they don't want to replace Christianity with nothing. They want to replace it with something. They want to replace it with
I'll
a
be right back.
system put in their own image. You know, this has been the temptation of man from the very beginning. We can have a religion in God's image, or we can have a religion in our own image.
What did I
We can
miss?
make ourselves our own God, and that is that that it said that pride is the foundation of all sin, and that's exactly what atheists, secularists are advocating. That you should have pride in yourself, and you should make yourself your own God. So there is nothing unusual going on here. This is something that has been going on throughout human history.
Truth Hurts says something, and look, I know this is a very contentious topic, so I'm going to tread lightly here because this is one that's this is a series of landmines. Without the Reformation, there wouldn't have been the Enlightenment. Martin Luther made everything worse. Now Thaddeus knows my views on Martin Luther, and it's not because I just woke up one day and didn't like him, but um, I, based on the research that I've done, and now understand, just as Muslims have very strong defenses for Islam, which are not that strong. I mean, they're pretty ridiculous. Atheists have built up their defenses for atheism. The whole defense of Martin Luther is pretty solid. It's pretty tight, and I mean it's very, very well researched, very well prepared and structured. It doesn't mean I believe a word of it, because I think it's all crap. Quite bluntly, I don't believe Martin Luther was Christian at the end of his life. I don't believe he was a heretic. I've said that, and I'll say it bluntly. Right? Martin Luther was a heretic, and I don't even think he was Christian at the end of his life. Whatever he did, he went very far off the rails. But yeah, he caused a lot of problems. So, yeah, so okay, so I did put my foot in it there. But the issue is that some of this stuff, you can go back, if you go back to the 18th century, you'll find there's the modern socialism that we're discussing today, 18th to 21st century. However, you can find the echoes of this in the 14th, the 15th century, right? You can find in the 15th century, you will find echoes of this. If you look up a guy called, and I thank you again to one of my subscribers who commented, they mentioned Marsilio of Padua. And yes, you need to go have a look. So this goes back to the 15th century. But then you can still go prior to that. There's another, you can find echoes of this prior to that. So this philosophy developed over time. And then quite interestingly, you will find it, and this is again going off into conspiracy theory territory, and I don't want to go there, but quite literally, it is part and parcel of the Muslims. This surfaces originally in a well-known, historically proven Islamic secret society. So I'll leave it at that. Okay, so transcendence, as one news columnist has noted, transcendence has been, shall we say, declared inoperative by the major agencies that officially define reality. So, in other words, American government has become secularized or has joined this religion, and they've decided there's no transcendence. Universities, schools, educational institutions, public institutions, and so on. Any comment before I go on?
Yeah, well, I agree with that last statement there, that the United States is more religious than most Western countries, but at the same time, there's kind of this unspoken rule that everyone knows that it's not real. Religion isn't real. We don't talk about it because everyone can have their beliefs. They're all equally valid because they're all just nonsense in the end. And that's kind of the unspoken rule that dominates the culture.
Yeah, but if you have ideas that conflict, only one of those ideas will win. Right?
Well, that's logically true, but that's not the credo. The credo is that all the beliefs are equally valid. All religion is the same. And the unstated part of that is they're all the same because they're all false and only atheism is true. Ha ha ha.
Exactly. Actually, that's a very, very good point. That's a very good point. Yeah, someone mentioned the Saudis sending billions to universities. I have a couple of shows on that. I have like 3 or 4 videos on that, Protestant Believer. I have 3 or 4 shows on that. You can watch them. They're extremely detailed breakdown, financial breakdown, utilizing US government financial records and others, showing exactly the amount of money that we can trace, that the Saudis, the Qataris, the Iranians, and others are putting into. Just look up the Arab lobby. Just search for on my channel, the Arab lobby. You'll find that they are pouring a lot of money. And in fact, we only know Yes, that's all covered, Andrew Martin. That's all detailed in my discussion. It's a very detailed breakdown using the financial records that I could access, and we know that that's at least probably only half, if not less, than the actual number. The numbers are much higher than are reported. Okay, so the historical and traditional definition of religion from the same paper. The religion of the First Amendment is traditional theism. That's Christianity, and in particular Christianity. Justin Joseph Story, a leading Unitarian of his time who served on the Supreme Court, said, "At the time of the adoption of the Constitution and the First Amendment, the general, if not the universal sentiment in America was that Christianity ought to receive encouragement from the state so far as was not incompatible with the private rights of conscience and the freedom of worship." So in other words, America was founded with a Christian constitution. It's a Christian state. An attempt to level all religions and to make it a matter of state policy to hold all in utter indifference would have created universal disapprobation, if not universal indignation. In other words, America cannot treat other religions that are not Christian on equal playing field because you're a Christian country. That was the standing view, and they had to change this view. Now, I need to mention Hitler, for instance, did not abolish the Constitution of Germany. Germany still had the same constitution. He violated every single law in it. He went roughshod over it. He absolutely didn't follow it, but he never abolished the Constitution. So in other words, the Constitution is still there, but these people are by no means obeying the Constitution by the letter or the spirit. Thaddeus, your thoughts before I go on?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly true that when the founders spoke of religious freedom, they really meant that one Christian denomination would be not preferred over another. Arguably, they only even meant Protestant Christian denominations. Arguably, they didn't even include Catholicism. And they certainly weren't thinking of, Islam or Buddhism or atheism or secular humanism or anything like that.
Yeah, no, exactly. So, and those are not considered the same. So the final one is, thus the First Amendment was not meant to prevent the establishment of Christianity as a religion. Understand, this is the original, this is going back to the early church fathers of the Constitution, to coin a phrase, but to prevent one Christian denomination from dominating the others. So in other words, Christianity was seen as a dominant religion, as the established religion. However, it did mean that all Christian denominations, which then possibly may include Catholicism, Thaddeus, would all have, no one would be dominant, no one would push anyone out. Of course, the secularists are now doing exactly that. The framers had no intention of eradicating traditional theism. Of course, the secular humanists have exactly that aim in mind by the First Amendment, because to them religion entailed the relationship of man to a supreme being. James Madison termed religion as the duty which we owe to our Creator and the manner of discharging it. Madison, as well as the majority of the founders, was a theist. Now, when they say theist, that doesn't mean deist. Now, in fact, what is the book, which biblical book is the most commonly quoted by all of the founders? Anyone know? They all quote the Bible quite liberally. And I believe the main book, the book that is quoted the most, I could be wrong here, I could remember this wrong, I don't have the notes, but I did find this, was the book of Leviticus. It's a legal book, right? It's a legal text. So I believe they all quoted the book of Leviticus the most. And I don't know which New Testament book they quoted the most within their writings, but they quoted the Bible quite liberally. So, yeah. So the framers.
That's actually quite interesting, right? That they're turning to the Bible to establish U.S. law, as evidenced by the quoting of Leviticus, and yet today we're told, they were basically atheists. They were very secular. Yes. They didn't believe in religion.
Yeah, I know.
They definitely weren't founding the country as a Christian state.
Correct.
Very interesting.
And it says here, the framers never intended a complete separation of church and state, because that is not in the U.S. Constitution. Separation of church and state is not in the Constitution. Right? So understand, don't take advice from your enemies. Don't let your enemies define your terms. Right? There was someone in the chat earlier that said, in the comments in the previous video, and said, Jesus didn't do X, therefore I don't do X. Well, Jesus didn't go to the airport and fly on a plane either. So therefore, what are you doing flying on a plane? Jesus didn't use credit cards. Jesus didn't fill his car with gas. Right? So yeah, I mean, okay, yeah. Jesus didn't use medicines that we know of. Jesus didn't laugh. So why would you want to laugh? Well, what's that, you bigot? Stop laughing. I mean, it's stupid. Like, seriously, that is just idiotic. Sorry,
I think
Thaddeus,
he
your thoughts?
laughed, Lloyd. I'll give you the other ones, but I do think he laughed.
No, it's dumb. I just look, sorry, I just think it was dumb. Right, so fine, we're ending off, we're slowly winding down here. So, Enlightenment principles, utopia, and Jefferson. So, the Enlightenment principles are generally associated with what was called the Age of Reason, or the Age of Debauchery, rather in the 18th century. Now, the American and the French revolutions happened in this century. Now, notice they took very different turns. They were interpreted very differently. The American Revolution was through a Christian lens, the French Revolution through an atheist lens. The French Revolution turned into a bloodbath, an absolute slaughter. The American Revolution established the greatest country on earth. Sue me for that. Okay? I need to sneak across the border and vote for Trump in the next election, just to annoy people. Anyway, that's what it. Oh gosh, if people did that, the border would be shut so fast. So, one, reason is the new authority. This is one of the principles of the Enlightenment. I'm just kidding, all right? Maybe I'm not. So anyway, reason is the new authority. So reason replaces all older forms of moral authority and replaces God with man. So it's not about reason, it's about replacing God. And Thomas Jefferson, as an example of this radical thinking, he did a major edit of the Bible. Thomas Jefferson wrote his own Bible, basically. In fact, he didn't call it a Bible. He called it The Life and Morals of Jesus of Nazareth, commonly called the Jefferson Bible. He took a razor blade and cut and pasted his own. So he proposed a review of the morals of the ancient philosophers, moving on to the deism and ethics of the Jews, and concluding with the principles of a pure deism taught by Jesus, omitting the question of his deity. Your thoughts, Thaddeus?
Well, I just love that. He removes all the words of Jesus he doesn't like, and removes all the working of miracles and the resurrection. And then he says, and what I have left is the pure deism taught by Jesus. Who taught this exactly? Was that you who made Jesus teach this, or was it what Jesus actually taught? I just thought that was too
Yeah.
humorous. But it's actually exactly what the Muslims do, right? They take the Bible and they remove all the parts they don't like, and they say this is the real Jesus. Whatever small percentage that we can distort to look like Islam, that's the true Jesus, and everything else you just ignore that, and you just take your razor blade and you remove that from the Bible.
Yeah, no. And there's another famous Protestant reformer that also did that. I don't want to mention any names. Right, so now this was completed in 1820 by cutting and pasting with a razor and then gluing sections from the New Testament. And his work excludes all miracles by Jesus and most mentions of the supernatural, including sections of the four Gospels that contain the resurrection and passages that portray Jesus as divine. And this was his interpretation of what he termed the Christian system, which makes it into a very mechanical sort of political process or a system. I don't know. It just kind of makes it very secular, I guess, rather than an actual religion. Your thought, that is,
Yeah, I don't have anything to add there.
Yeah. So he did want to print it, I believe, but then at the last minute he changed his mind or something. There was something about that. So now, remember, all of these utopians are building the perfect world, right? All people are basically good. That's their claim. Well, Christianity says, look, all people, they don't say people are evil. That is not the Christian claim. Guys, can you give me one moment? Thaddeus, if you can just, I'll be 20 seconds. I'll be with you right now.
Yep, no worries. So we have they want to get rid of the claim that all people are basically good. I mean, sorry, they want to have this without any basis. They get rid of the religious foundation to it, but still say that all people are basically good. And this is what we see in atheism over and over today. That most atheists assert that humans have intrinsic value. Where do they get that from? Well, nowhere. And it's just a first principle. You can't question it because it's assumption that is unsupported and unsupportable, I might add. There is nothing in atheism that would allow you to conclude people are basically good, but you need that. Without that, you can't form any sense of morality. You end up with the conclusion like we were looking at from that author earlier, where he says, human beings have no value. There is no such thing as human rights. Yeah. Rights can't be violated because they don't exist. So you start with a first principle that human beings are good, and you just pretend that it's true, even though you have no reason to believe it's true.
Yeah, no, excellent. Yeah, so yeah, as Christians, well, Christian doctrine would show that man is fallen. He has a fallen nature. He tends to be drawn to doing wrong, to sinning. It doesn't say that we are evil, but it says that we're not perfect. Whereas this says that you are perfect and that you can do no wrong. And well, there is no wrong anyway. So what the hell? So yeah, I mean, this is so which means that anything you do is either deterministic or it's okay. So therefore, if you kill someone, rape someone, it's fine. So that is a serious problem with this. And progress, a near perfect society can be created if you follow reason. Now, so educate
Sure.
people, okay? Yeah. So is this the will or the logos, right? Is this the principle of reason, which is tied to the morality of God, or is this the will, which is satanic? The will is the satanic. We had a talk on the will versus logos. Have a look at that, the will versus logos. I have a talk of that on my channel and on Thaddeus' channel, I believe. So also, don't forget, the reason here is constrained like the Sharia. It's like Islamic reason is constrained by the Sharia. You can think as long as you don't overstep the bounds of the Sharia. Here, you can reason as long as you don't overstep the bounds of the philosophy of the Communist Manifesto or whatever it is. That is, yeah?
Yeah, well, I mean, you put in parentheses there, will or logos, and it's clearly a will in reality. They want to use this word reason. They want to say we only go where the evidence leads, but it's really about will. Tying in with the second one there, that it's about self. It's about making yourself God. There's two options the atheist can have. They can go with the nihilistic view where nothing has any meaning, but most people don't want to go there. Most people want to say that life has meaning. Well, where do you find meaning without God? You find it in self. It's all about I am my own God.
Yeah. Now, these adherents, they live in the time of enlightenment, right? It was the enlightenment. We're enlightened. Those who came before live in darkness. This is a direct parallel with the Islamic Jahiliyyah. Those who came before Islam are in the Jahiliyyah, right? So, whereas Muslims are living in the Enlightenment, because that was the Islamic Enlightenment, effectively speaking, right? So remember, Jahiliyyah is not the time of ignorance, it is the condition of ignorance, right? It's not an era, a time that's in the past, it's now. If you're not a Muslim, you are in the Jahiliyyah, you are in the condition of ignorance. So yeah, so this is what they believe, like Muslims. The perfect society should be free from monarchy, which it deems an artificial form of imposed political control that claims divine authority. Enlightenment seeks equality of people. Right now, of course, we've got the French, the Russian, and the American revolutions, which had three very different outcomes. And the new world should be free of slavery. Now, man, if we go into the history of communism, you look at Lenin, you look at the Bolsheviks under Lenin, you look at Stalin. Oh my God, slavery was enormous in those ideologies. And of course, no one should own anyone else, except that is exact. You became a slave under atheist socialist regimes. That is the norm. And of course, they believe you need to get rid of Christianity. When they say organized religion, they really mean just Christianity as a means to perfect society. Religion requires belief in things that cannot be established by reason. Of course, things that cannot be established by reason are, by their definitions, evil. That's what Richard Dawkins said. What cannot be established by reason is by default evil. Of course, he doesn't believe in evil, but you're evil anyway. And of course, they believe in multiple universes, which they have absolutely 0.00000 proof for. They have literally no proof of multiple universes, but hey, they believe in that stuff anyway. Thaddeus, yeah.
Well, a quick point on the multiverse first. When I was growing up, coming of age as a teenager 20 plus years ago, it was common in atheist literature to make fun of the idea of a multiverse, saying that this was sheer desperation for someone to appeal to it. Now it's pretty popular. It seems that they've reached the state of sheer desperation where you have to go to an unprovable assumption to make your theories work. Very
Yeah.
interesting.
And of course, they
But
want
what
to
I
get rid
really
of the
wanted to
Big
point out
Bang.
here,
Sorry, yeah, sorry.
what I really wanted to point out here, our Kitsun said exactly, we are sinners by default. That's why only the God-man could be the blameless sacrifice for us. I think that's a really good point, that there's a reason that the individual is elevated. There's a reason that the individual is said to be basically good, because if you're basically good, then you don't need any external savior. You are your own savior. It's directly designed to replace Christ.
Yeah, greater love hath no man than this, that he laid down his life for his friends, which means that Jesus considers you his friends, right? If you think of it in that sense, greater love hath no man than this, that he laid down his life for others. So yeah, this is someone who gave the ultimate, who paid the ultimate price for you, so you don't have to. So yeah, that's just a very different view of the world than a nihilist, dead end worldview with nothing. Someone who loves you and cares about you and wants the best for you versus a complete nihilist dead end with no meaning. That's hollow and arid. So, yeah. So, yeah, the spirit of Gnosticism, Malcolm, is pretty much atheist. Now, from Deism to humanism, this is all Marxism and atheism. Now, let's have a look. Deism is the fourth principle of the Enlightenment. There's a God who created the world, but then he got lost somewhere, fell over, bumped his head and passed out cold, and hasn't been seen since. Right, pretty much like your grandfather with Alzheimer's, who walked out the door, took a bus, and no one has seen him since 1942. Right, pretty much like that. So the world was made to operate on natural laws which rule out miracles. And the Creator does not interfere with the creation, which is the Gnostic monad. It's just Gnosticism dressed up with nice words. So, yeah, final thoughts, that is?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting. The first three principles you might expect, but then the fourth principle is deism, and you say, well, how does that fit in?
Because they want to give you a god. They realize they need to give you a fig leaf of something. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you explained that pretty well. That it's a god that doesn't really matter, or it's the god that protects you from being murdered in your sleep.
Yeah. Well, think of it. They're willing to believe in a literal multiplicity, an infinity of universes, and they have difficulty believing in one God. Just so they don't have to believe in a single God, we've got to believe in an infinity of universes that no one's got any evidence for. So, yeah. So this is basically, I think deism is a cop-out. I think it's a cop-out, basically. That's what it looks like. So the principles of Marxism, so as we wind down, class struggle is the driving force of history. Okay? Now, this duality, of course, says now this is the bourgeoisie, and having a family means you're part of the bourgeois class, which means that you are a nasty, evil person, right? According to this atheist socialist idea. Atheism is integral. There's no God. God was created by humans, by human elites. Organized religion was designed by elites to keep people under control. So let me see. Hold on. This is Marx talking. This is every atheist talking. So every atheist must by default be a Marxist. Because if you're keeping company with Hitler, if you're keeping company with Stalin, Marx, I mean, hold on. I mean, is that a problem, Thaddeus? Or is that just atheism for you?
I mean,
yeah.
So we needed to distinguish between, how people would think of themselves and how their actions would be seen in practice. So certainly many atheists today, I don't have a percentage, but many atheists today would absolutely say that Marxism is bad and whatnot. Say, I'm definitely not a communist. I don't believe in socialism, whatever. Then on the other hand, you say, well, what do your beliefs allow for? What do your beliefs enable? And they absolutely enable the most vicious communist regime to ever have existed. Is completely compatible with any atheist view, whether they say they believe in communism or not.
Yeah, isn't that?
Or as you put it in the previous slide, is that the atheist is the useful idiot to the communist.
Correct. They're enabling the communist cause. They're part of the communist revolution by default. By, maybe not by commission, but by omission or whatever, but they are certainly enabling the communist cause. Right? I mean, if they were an active communist, they'd be doing the very same thing. But they're not a communist, but yet they're doing the same thing as the active communist. What's the difference? What's the difference? Very little. Because, I mean, if you have a magnet that is attracted to one and clicks on one that is pushed by another magnet because of opposite poles, are you less under the control of the other magnet because you're doing the opposite? No, you're still very much under control of the other magnet. You're still, right? So, Yeah, Marxism is scientific socialism. Now, don't forget, socialism was created as a form of Christianity. Just like Jefferson's version of the Bible, this was the socialist form of Christianity. Don't remember, it was scientific Christianity. This is Christianity improved with science. That is effectively what it is. It is scientific Christianity. We're going to make it better, because we're here for you, buddy. So that's what they're doing. So Marxism is scientific socialism. It practices scientific atheism. Now, don't forget, atheists today practice scientific atheism. Marx and Lenin, well, they practiced scientific atheism. They wrote about it. Scientific atheism. They had militant atheists. Well, we have militant atheists today. Richard Dawkins advocates for militant atheism. So did Marx. So did Lenin. So did Stalin. So I don't know. I mean, so did Voltaire. And then we ended up having genocides in every single case. So now Marx's form of socialism is superior due to its scientific implementation and research. You see, this is how what made Marx superior. And he's not speculating about what may happen. His claims are inevitability. You see, Marx's claims were inevitable. He could not be wrong. He's like it's like those Islamic scholars that the hand of Allah is over the group and the scholars cannot be wrong. The Mujtahids Mutlaq. They are absolute scholars. They cannot be wrong. While Marx's claims were absolutely correct. They were going to be proven right. That is.
Yeah, well, take it away from Marx personally and just say, science's claims are inevitable. Science can't be proven wrong. It's funny how you throw this word science in front of anything and somehow it becomes more credible. Scientific atheism, scientific socialism, the science of hadith. That proves that that Islam is true. The science of hadith established that these are legitimate hadith, and we can see this in various other ways as well. And of course, as we've already said, it's just semantics. Just throwing the word science in front of something and declaring that makes it objective doesn't actually make it objective in any way.
Yeah. So Marxism has international appeal. It crosses social and international boundaries, and as we saw from the the American Committee on Un-American Activities, right, from the U.S. government, they had international appeal. In fact, that's why it's called the Comintern, the Communist International. The Nazis, that is national communism, right? These guys were, the Comintern is international communism. That was Stalin, communism for the world. Whereas the Nazis were race-based. They had race-based socialism, right? Race-based communism. So this was communism for the nation, specifically the Aryan race, the German race, the pure German race. So this was international communism versus national communism. That's all it was. So, and of course they appealed to the churches. They said that a wide appeal to the churches. They'd actively solicited, conversion within churches into communism. They cross social and international boundaries, and allegiance is to class, not country. This implies patriotism is verboten. As you know, these days patriotism in the US is a bad thing. Patriotism in Europe is a bad thing, except in Poland. Now, of course, allegiance is to the Ummah, not to your country. Isn't that fascinating, Thaddeus?
Indeed.
Just like in Islam. Isn't that weird? And here's an important thing. Revolution is needed to achieve the goals of communism. It is not a peaceful religion. It is inherently violent. I should also mention that jihad is needed for Islam to achieve its goals. It is a revolutionary religion. You have two kinds of Muslims, revolutionary Muslims and long march Muslims. You got the long march through society Muslims, and you have the revolutionary Muslims. So now, eat the rich. Well, that in the French Revolution, they murdered the rich. Overthrow the bourgeoisie. Well, they murdered anyone that wouldn't follow along. Marx anticipated a spontaneous revolution. Lenin stated that the workers and farmers were incapable of revolution, and they needed the guidance of a professional class of revolutionaries who would take power and run the revolution for them. Isn't that fascinating? You guys can't do this. We'll do it for you, but we need to stay in power so that you can overthrow the government, which is us. Yeah, okay, that is.
Yeah, I mean, but just trust that we'll be better. You don't like the monarchy, get rid of them and replace them with a dictatorship, and that'll solve all your problems. Because, see, we're the benevolent dictatorship. we'll disappear when we're no longer needed. Of course, we know in practice that never happens. The Soviets were under the control of the Communist Party, waiting for that day when they'd be no longer needed for 70 years until the new revolution to overthrow the communist government. So it seems very convenient.
Yeah. No, you'll see that actually comes up. Oh, good grief. Sorry, I made a wrong mistake here. Let me fix this. Okay, that's better. Oopsie. Okay, so let's look at mandatory poverty, right? You just want to, one of the outcomes of these wonderful ideas that they want to force down your throat. There's a Soviet joke, and again, thank you to someone in the comments. I really appreciate it. There's a Soviet joke that goes, the Christians only preached the advantages of poverty. The communists enforced them. I think that's brilliant. Okay, and Karl Marx, as you know, said shortages will be equally distributed among the poor. Okay, maybe I made that one up, but okay, it's still true. Okay, I might have invented it, but it's still true. So notice, we've got a couple of examples of a country that was split in two, into a Soviet state and a Western state, right? Western style state. And North Korea, South Korea, and West Germany and East Germany, right? Now, this is the level of development in North Korea. Now, the 5 richest people in South Korea produce more money, have more money than the entire country of North Korea. Than the paradise, the utopia of North Korea produces less money than just the 5 richest people in North Korea alone. Okay, so this is the level of development here, North Korea versus South Korea. Your thoughts, Thaddeus?
Yeah, well, I mean, this map drives it home, but the astronauts will tell you that people say in space there's no borders, but that's not true. There is one border, and that's the border between South and North Korea. That's quite apparent from space.
Yeah, you can very clearly see the difference in development, the poverty. Now, this is the invisible wall between East and West Germany. So now, East Germany's GDP per capita was equivalent to just 43% of that of the West in 1991. Right, 43% of West Germany in 1991. So, and now in 2018, it's only 75%. It still hasn't caught up. It still has not caught up. So East Germany is still not caught up. The attitudes left behind by communism, the destructive effects, still exist today. And for instance, look at disposable income. Nicholas, you'd love Poland. It's a great place to visit. Let me know if you do come to Warsaw. So yeah, so this is, if you look at the level of income, West Germany versus East Germany, there's still, poverty is still rife there. This is not the fault of the West. This is the fault of communism. The lack of development. It takes a long time to kickstart that development. I mean, Poland's doing amazingly, incredibly. This is 2011 data, so you can see. And then finally, the German wall, the Berlin Wall, okay, that separated East and West Berlin, was called the Antifaschistische Schutzwall. It wasn't called the Berlin Wall. It was called the Anti-Fascist Protection Wall. The East Germans called it the Anti-Fascist Protection Wall to protect them from the fascists on the Western side. See? So they called this the anti-fascist protection. So don't forget, you are fascists. So Antifa is not fighting fascists. Do understand this. Antifa is fighting you. Antifa sees you as the enemy. You are the fascists. Not the fascists, no, not the actual, not Mussolini and his fascists, no. You are the fascists. You are the enemy. And they built this wall to fight against the fascists. Your thoughts, Thaddeus? We're nearly done.
Yeah, well, capitalism equals fascism in the mind of the East German or the radical protester today.
Yeah. Okay, so Wooch. Okay, interesting, man. Do you fly through Warsaw? So, right, here's an old story. Those who would imprison Christians for hate crimes for daring to say there are only 2 genders or refusing to bake cakes for gay weddings, but they're a private company, they can do what they want, except that embraces allies those who throw gays off roofs. They are allies like Hitler and Stalin were in the common cause to eradicate Western civilization, considered evil for its Judeo-Christian roots. Individualism, personal. Now, do humanists not understand that civilization, freedom, human rights are on the verge of extinction, and capitalist Christians in Israel are not the ones at fault? Of course they do. Of course they know. Yes, they know. They know exactly that. The answer is simple. Humanists are the communists. They are the fascists. The useful idiots who, like their Islamic partners, despise human rights because they don't believe that human rights exist. Those are Christian ideas. Thaddeus? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is very interesting that, atheism is against all religions, yet they'll ally themselves with anyone who is not a Christian religion. Islam, we worship the same God as Christians, yet we'll ally ourselves with atheists or anyone else who isn't a Christian. It seems that to both groups, what's more important than their actual stated beliefs is being against Christianity. Atheists, we're against religion, but really we're mostly against Christianity. Muslims, non-Muslims are bad. But really, the Christians are the worst. We really don't like them the most of all.
Yeah. We worship the same God. Okay, please slaughter your next animal at Eid in the name of Yahweh. Say the Bismillah in the name of Yahweh. Say the Shahada in the name of Yahweh. Oh, you won't? Oh, I thought it's the same God. You just happen to call him Allah. No, it's not the same God. It's really simple. But that's a very, the contradiction there is very clear, very starkly, very well said. Yeah, so guys, that wraps this up. My next presentation is about schmuckular humanism, which is Gnosticism plus socialism plus Christianity produces schmuckular humanism. So, well, actually, that's not the name, but it's actually socialism, the founding of socialism as a fake Christianity. And yeah, so yeah, hopefully, guys, that is true. We spend a few minutes on the other presentation again, or any last words, or what should we do?
Yeah, I think we can, we can call it here. I think that, the main takeaway from today's presentation is that atheism, secularism, humanism, however you want to call it, is absolutely a religion.
Mm-hmm.
And that
a lot like Islam, just to annoy TT in the chat, you guys really going to act like atheism and Islam is the same? For sure, buddy, 100%. Because you need to watch the presentation. It's a political religion.
Are we saying that they're 100% identical in every teaching? No. But what are we actually saying? We're saying that they share a lot in common and that both of them are primarily against Christianity. They're against, in theory, atheism is against Islam. But
in practice,
they're much more interested in attacking Christianity, so they'll ally themselves with Muslims when it's convenient. Have you ever seen an atheist ally themselves with Christians to attack Islam? I mean, you can probably come up with a couple isolated examples. But has it ever been done as a political movement? Has it ever been as a major thing, beyond the level of an individual? Not that I'm aware of. I'm aware of, many Muslims who will ally themselves with atheists to attack Christianity, and not just on an individual level, but as a organized thing. And we've pointed out many similarities. Yes, we could point out some differences. The point being that really, at least from our perspective, from the Christian perspective, is that there's really only two religions in the world. There is the religion where you rely on God, that everything, you place all of your trust in God alone. And then there's the religion where you place all your trust in yourself. And atheism and Islam and all the other world's religions absolutely fall into that second category. That at bottom, it's all about self. It's all about, I am my own God. I determine my own future. Whereas in Christianity, it's all about, I cannot achieve salvation on my own. I have to place my trust in something beyond myself, an all-powerful God who provides that for me.
Yeah. Just so, by the way, this is Lenin. Now, this is the book, Death by Government, which is the single most detailed study of genocide by government forces. And this will bluntly tell you that socialist atheist governments, he says it straight up, are the most destructive, murderous form of government. Atheist governments are the most murderous form of government invented. And socialist governments, and Islam is socialist, get that straight. And Lenin says here, the scientific concept of dictatorship means nothing else but this: power without limit, resting directly upon force, restrained by no laws, absolutely unrestricted by rules. That's Mr. Lenin for you. Now, the atheists say lots of things that he also said. Maybe they don't say this, maybe they don't say it like this, but these are the things that they believe, these are the things they say. Let me have a look here. Marxism is thoroughly uncompromising. It knows truth absolutely. It knows good is communism and evil is capitalism. See, you are evil. Now, notice they sacrificed, this is the Chinese, a sacrifice of over 35 million souls for a better society. See, they're doing this for a better society. The unborn, you see, the people of the future. We're killing you now for a better society. And of course, notice this is the Young Turks. They lived in a golden age, an age of enlightenment. Oh my golly, during which the Turks manifested all the great virtues. Isn't that fascinating? Who knew that? Okay, they glorified Turkism and, like the Nazis, believed themselves a master race. But notice this from their history: the Young Turks had murdered 1.5 million Armenians. Being practically all atheists, the Young Turks only used Islam to incite the Muslim masses against Turkey's Armenians. Wow, looks like they. I mean, it's not like it's illegal in Islamic law to murder Christians anyway. But yeah, these guys were socialists too. So isn't that fascinating? So understand, there's a lot going on here that that we all need to learn about.
Yeah, and someone earlier asked if you would do a presentation on eugenics. I don't know if that's on your agenda,
Ah,
but I will
guys, yeah.
say,
I mean,
I
I
will
hope you don't
say,
think it takes 5 minutes. Please understand this stuff.
yeah, yeah,
This
yeah.
stuff can
Uh,
take months. Okay.
But I just wanted to bring that up and say that the West, the non-communist countries absolutely are not immune to this. The West has a history of supporting eugenics. Eugenics is the scientific conclusion. If all there is genetics, well, we can modify genetics. We can ensure that only genetically superior people reproduce, and that took place everywhere. Throughout the industrialized world, there was eugenic movements. And the only thing that seemingly stopped it, and I'll explain seemingly in a second, was the realization that Hitler had used the same principles as eugenics to justify his atrocities. That's the only thing that slowed it down. But you know what? Eugenic proponents figured out that they had an alternative. If we can, if we can't prevent, inferior people from breeding, well,
Abortion.
what we can do is prevent inferior people from being born. Abortion replaced eugenics as the way to achieve a better human race. Doctor tells you your baby is going to have a genetic defect, you just get rid of them. Problem solved.
Yeah. Yeah. So guys, hopefully this has been very helpful. You're learning something, but you realize that all of these movements are they are put forward by a spirit of evil. I don't know how else you can say that. It is evil. It is just evil. It is anti-life. It's a spirit that is anti-life. And I know there's lots of conspiracy theories, but really, it's Gnosticism was an effort to Christianize paganism, to give it a seemingly modern look. All the cool guys were becoming Christians. Well, let's take our paganism, slap a pseudo-biblical face in it, and hey, there you go, it's Gnosticism. We're just like you guys. No, it's not. And this is just paganism. These are just pagan social ideas with Gnosticism, which is myth-making, with some crazy political ideas and social ideas. Myth on top. It's all messed up. So that is, what did you get out of this? What was your takeaway?
Yeah, it was a fascinating look at the history of socialism and atheism over the two episodes. Tons of material that is not familiar to me, which means I'm guessing it's not familiar to the vast majority of people. We hear about the atrocities in Christian history, And to be clear, Christians absolutely need to answer to those. We absolutely need to condemn those. But we never hear about the atrocities in atheist history, much like we never hear about the atrocities in Islamic history,
Yeah.
interestingly enough. And, you know, if atheists are going to say that, you know, I'm not a Christian because religion leads to war, religion causes hatred, religion causes violence and destruction, then they need to answer for the actual history of atheism, which is 100 times more violent and more filled with what would be deemed atrocities from a Christian worldview, not necessarily consistently from an atheist worldview, but the same kinds of things that atheists say Christians need to answer for in a much shorter period of time. I think at one point you pulled up the numbers and you calculated on a per year basis,
Yeah.
and you're like, the Inquisition killed 14 people a year. The French Revolution massacre of priests, specifically anti-religious violence, killed 5,000 people a year. And we hear about the Inquisition all the time. We rarely discuss the French Revolution at all. And if we do, it certainly never talk about the religious aspect or anti-religious aspect behind it.
Yeah. No, agreed. So they need to answer for that. This is atheism. These are the actions. So look, John Q. Atheist in the comments is going to come in and tell you, but I don't believe that. Okay, that's what every Muslim says. But I don't believe that. Okay, what about the other 2 billion of you? Right? So, okay, so you don't. That's nice. That's nice. But you need to explain to the others how they all got it wrong. And how come every major atheist, I thought atheism leads to reason. How come atheism consistently leads to genocide? Consistently leads to totalitarianism, leads to oppression. And yeah, so it's like all these major atheists are doing it wrong. That's right. Okay. And again, this is the origin of socialist religion. Remember, socialism is a term coined in the 1820s. And it comes from a Frenchman, of course. And it's by a French social theorist, one of the chief founders of what he called Christian socialism. Right? It was a counterfeit Christian religion. It was effectively scientific Christianity. Not Christian Science, okay? It was scientific Christianity. And yeah, Hitler's religious views. Yeah, I have all the information. I need to put the story of Hitler, the claim that Hitler was a Christian. I need to put that into presentation format. But I have all the notes. I have all the Poland. I would say Poland's a very Christian country. Poland is officially a Christian country. It has been since 1025, if I recall. I think since 1025. Yeah, over 1,000 years now. Poland's a Christian country. It's very much homogenous and Catholic. It's very strongly Catholic. So, and church attendance is good. It's really good. I mean, churches are full. So, yeah, I wouldn't want Poland to change, quite bluntly. Theocracy, no. Islam's a theocracy. Communist countries were theocracies. So, of course, it's not a theocracy. Do you see people being murdered? It's one of the safest. I can walk around at night here and I not have to worry. So, no, it's a very safe country. People actually have moral values here. See? So because people actually have Christian moral values here. They grew up with these. So, yeah, guys, let me see if there's anything fascinating here. Yeah, all of these, I mean, once you look at the... have a look at this. I want to mention, this is the guy who founded modern socialism. Okay? He said that there's a 3-stage process, a religious, a metaphysical, and finally a scientific process that would occur, through which society passed as knowledge became more common. Okay? Ethics would become a science, and Dawkins says that, Harris says that, atheists have been saying that for a couple of decades now. This idea goes back to this incredibly insane man, and now we've got Dawkins saying it. And this ethics would become a science to be calculated and defined with precision and certainty. Pull up your calculator. We're going to work out the morality of this decision. In the process, banishing conflict to the history books. Socialism would banish conflict to the history books, that is. Isn't that a great idea? Okay, someone needs to tell the socialists that. And he said, Okay, for all his uncritical worship of science, he recognized that dry rationality alone would not suffice, as did Voltaire, as did Robespierre. And he said that people needed emotions and feelings in their life. Rather than crush Christianity, he sought to replace it with a different system. And that's been the standard tactic of all of these totalitarian men. He replaced deity in his book called The New Christianity. He replaced deity with humanity. He replaced the clergy with scientists. He replaced faith with scientific knowledge and proposed a social reorganization centered on a cult of Newton. He could verge on the mad, but his religion of scientific atheism formed the mold from which many others would take their shape. He was taken seriously by John Stuart Mill, Thomas Carlyle, Karl Marx, and Friedrich Engels, amongst others. Thaddeus, final word. Thank you very much, Nicholas. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. I'm very grateful.
Yeah, I think this is a slide from the second presentation.
Correct.
Yeah, I think that as we continue to dive into this subject, we're going to see the completely religious origins of socialism. And to be clear, by religious origins, I don't mean that it's a outgrowth of Christianity or some other religion. What I mean is that it was explicitly designed to be a new religion, a religion that would replace Christianity. Atheism doesn't generally seek to replace Christianity with nothing, despite the slogan. Rather, they seek to replace it with something else.
Yeah, so these are atheists who have a cult, not a religion. It's a counterfeit religion. It's a counterfeit Christianity. So you can be atheist and still a cultist. So, yeah, guys, so let's wrap it up. Thank you very much. It's 9 p.m. here. Thaddeus, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time, your patience, your input on all of this, and the fact that you put up with me saying some very inflammatory things. I know that, I say some.
Yeah, to be clear, I don't necessarily agree with 100% of Lloyd says, but I probably agree with 99% of it, and I can, put up with 1% difference. So.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I know. For the Protestants out there, I'm a Protestant. I was raised a Protestant. I am not a Catholic. Just understand that. But when I look at some of the issues in the Protestant church, I am not happy. And there's a certain person, there's a certain guy. I'm not going to mention his name, but there's a certain guy back in the day, and I've looked into his history, and I'm like, good grief, this man is slimy. This man is slimy and disgusting, and that's my opinion of that dude. We all know who I'm talking about, I hope so. Yeah. And I'm like, good grief, I need to talk about him one day, but I need to be very careful because I need to be very well prepared to deal with it, because the apologetics on him are very tight. I don't believe a freaking word. I don't believe a word of it, but they are very well written apologetics for him. So I'll tackle that one day. Thank you, guys. Not perfect, man. Utterly corrupt would be much better. Absolutely corrupt and foul. That's the impression I've come away with. So yeah, he wasn't just anti-Semitic, man. The man was foul to the core. You need to look into his life. The man was dirty to the bottom. Thank you, guys. Have a great evening. Have a great week. I hope Sunday's been good. Thaddeus, thank you again. I couldn't do this without Thaddeus, guys. Thaddeus has been a huge asset to me. He's been patient. He's been, he would give me fantastic advice, and he's the reason that I'm doing this. He's made sure that I don't go off the rails too much and kept me on the straight and narrow. So thank you. So yeah, I will see. Hopefully Wednesday I should do a show with Thunderous. I'll go through some of the same material and talk about some new things with Thunderous. All right, guys, take care. Atheist rules. No, atheism is sick, TT. Atheism is sick. Your religion sucks. It is violent. It is brutal. It is pagan. It is the most disgusting, murderous ideology of the last 250 years. Thanks, guys. Take care. Have a good night. And I'll see you all soon. God bless.
God bless.